Welcome back to Crux Stationalis. Today we're going to speak about the Roman Station Church of Saints John and Paul. But before we speak about that, I want to share with you some beautiful news. This evening, Thursday, March 6th, I'm recording this just about an hour after the rosary was prayed in St. Peter's Square for the health of Pope Francis. Before that rosary began, we received an audio message from Pope Francis. And I just want to play that for you, and then I'll give you the translation. So here it is.
Agradezco de todo corazón las oraciones que hacen por mi salud desde la plaza. Los acompaño desde acá. Que Dios los bendiga y que la Virgen cuide. Gracias.
To those present in St. Peter's Square this evening, the message said, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your prayers for my health from the square. I accompany you from here. May God bless you and the Virgin protect you. Thank you. He shared this message in Spanish, and it's been 21 days that he's been in the hospital. And so we can say after these 3 weeks, the voice of the Pope has returned to St. Peter's Square, albeit in this simple manner. So we continue to pray for Pope Francis from St. Peter's Square every night with the Rosary. I know this is a bit off the beaten track for the Roman Station pilgrimage, but it's the Jubilee year. It's this situation where we have our Holy Father in the hospital. We haven't experienced something like this for 20 years. So for a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, this is the sort of first experience. I definitely remember when I was a young teenager when I was experiencing at that point the death of St. John Paul II. And so obviously the world has been very preoccupied as we have been experiencing these daily health updates in the morning, which are quite simple messages, and then some updates sort of midday, and then the official health update in the evening. So especially since I work in this field, I just wanted to share with you this message which came to us tonight from Pope Francis, and the Holy See Press Office informs us that this message was recorded earlier today. But back to the Roman Station Church pilgrimage. On Friday, after Ash Wednesday, we go to the Basilica of Saints John and Paul. These saints are the saints that you hear of in the Roman canon, or the first Eucharistic prayer. So I welcome you back to this Roman Station Church pilgrimage. I'm so happy you're with me. If you're listening to this on YouTube, on Spotify, if you check the description for the podcast or the video description on YouTube, you'll see the helpful link, which will also take you to the video tour to explore visually the basilica that we are visiting today. Now, who are Saints John and Paul? They were Roman soldiers and brothers. German, basically, of origin, although Germany didn't exist, but they came from Northern Europe. And they were living in the 4th century. They served under Constantine the Great in his court. I mentioned yesterday the Palatine Hill. That would have been referencing the sort of flourishing of Rome and the palatial imperial status with the emperors. They served under Constantine the Great, and they were very close to his daughter, Constantina. Now, Constantina has a very beautiful mausoleum built in her honor next to a Basilica Constantiniana, built next to the burial place of Saint Agnes. Just to give you some interesting facts about Rome. The faith of John and Paul would be put to the test after their conversion when Emperor Julian the Apostate came to power in the year 361 AD. Julian sought to sort of destroy what Emperor Constantine had done with the legalization of Christianity, and he wanted to restore paganism. And so he demanded that all the high ranking officials offer sacrifice to the Roman gods. And naturally, being Christian soldier saints as they were, John and Paul refused. So instead of make a public spectacle of their execution, Julian had them secretly beheaded in their home on June 26, 362 AD. And the Basilica of Saints John and Paul sits above their homes. So for the Roman Station Church pilgrimage, in the evening, the Academia Culturum Martyrum, who are responsible for the Roman Station Church pilgrim itinerary, they will gather this year in the Case Romane, which is where we usually, since last year actually, have begun the opening prayer, and then we process with the litanies of the saints to the Basilica for Mass. The Basilica is undergoing works, so make sure you go check out my video so you can, which is linked in the video description, so that you can see the interior of the Basilica, because I won't have photos from this year. But they'll celebrate in the Case Romane, which are basically the level of where the houses were of Saints John and Paul. So their bodies were buried on the spot, and soon after, basically in their home, Christians venerated their house as a sacred site. And then by the early 5th century, their home had been transformed into a basilica. And now we enjoy visiting the Basilica of Saints John and Paul above their burial ground, above their home. So we can see how important they are if their names of these saints are in the Roman canon. We're going to experience this throughout the Roman station churches. As I mentioned in these last couple of days, the early Christians in Rome, they feel the sacrifice of the martyrs. They witnessed it, some of them, and that tradition carried them through with courage until Christianity was legalized. And so it's a very intimate reality, and therefore this is underscored by including them in the canon of the Mass, because they symbolize fidelity to Christ in the face of complete and utter opposition. And even after this sort of great victory of the legalization of Christianity, then you have this apostate come who wants to return to paganism. So especially Saints John and Paul, during this Lenten time, which is obviously, clearly, we all feel it, spiritual warfare, John and Paul remind us of what the cost of discipleship is. It's not just giving up chocolate. It's not just, all these sorts of checklist things that we do during Lent. They refuse to compromise their faith, even under this great imperial pressure. And their home-turned basilica, which we visit on the 3rd day of Lent, is a powerful symbol. Our faith is not just something we practice in churches. It must transform our very lives to the point of even death if it's asked of us. And so their house became a holy place where they were martyred and buried. They're 2 men who lived their faith with integrity to the point of death. As I mentioned, beneath the basilica, excavations have revealed ancient Christian frescoes, inscriptions, and even the remains of their original house, strengthening the tradition that this is truly where they lived and died. And you can visit these houses. Walking through these ruins, we step into the very place where these 2 saints bore their witness. So as we reflect on today's Station Church, we ask ourselves, are we living authentic faith? Or is it just appearances? Are we willing to let our homes, our lives, and even our sacrifices become places where Christ dwells? That's kind of already in the 3rd day of Lent, we have to reflect upon these things. And so we ask Saints John and Paul, especially when we hear their names in the canon, pray for us. I'm Jacob Stein. Thanks for joining me today at the Roman Station Church pilgrimage as we visited the Basilica of Saints John and Paul on the Caelian Hill. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all the things that you can do wherever you're listening from, and click and go and watch the video of the tour of Saints John and Paul. This basilica is one of my favorite. It's housed now for almost 3 centuries by the Passionist Fathers. So when you walk in, you'll also visit Passionist saints. So I give you a little bit of my sort of interior spiritual life as we're walking through this basilica, because 1400 years later, after the burial of Saints John and Paul, now there's Passionist saints buried here, especially the founder. So let me take you with you. Let me take you with me as we go to the Basilica of Saints John and Paul. And stay strong as we continue these days of Lent. God bless you.